What if the house you just moved into refused to let you leave? The words had been a half-joke from the real estate agent, but as Claire and Nathan stepped onto the creaking porch of the Winslow mansion, the joke twisted into an uneasy chill that ran down their spines. The house had been abandoned for decades, perched atop a hill like a sentinel over the surrounding town, its gray stone walls mottled with age and shadow. Ivy clung desperately to its sides, and the wind whispered through the broken shutters as though warning them to turn back. Claire tightened her grip on the canvas tote slung over her shoulder, filled with boxes of necessities for their first night in their new home. Nathan, ever the optimist, laughed nervously. "Well, at least we'll be the first to fix it up in 50 years. But his voice faltered as he stepped across the threshold. The front door groaned in protest, and when he pushed it fully open, the interior revealed a dark, cavernous hallway far larger than either of them expected. Dust motes danced in the shafts of evening light that pierced through the tall, arched windows. The air smelled of old wood, mothballs, and something faintly metallic. Claire's eyes roamed over the ornate staircase with its carved balusters, the faded portraits of grim-faced ancestors staring down as if judging their every step. They began unpacking, though each sound, the scraping of furniture, the tapping of shoes on wooden floors, echoed unnaturally long. At first, Claire attributed it to the house's size. But when she glanced toward the kitchen for a second time, the doorway seemed slightly narrower than before, the edges curling in a subtle distortion that made her stomach tighten. Did you notice that?" she asked Nathan, pointing. "Notice what?" he said, looking over his shoulder. But when he followed her gaze, the doorway appeared normal. He frowned, shrugging. "Must be the shadows playing tricks on you." Later that night, as they prepared for bed, Claire noticed something more alarming. The hallway outside their room seemed longer than before, stretching impossibly. She blinked, thinking exhaustion was playing tricks, but even Nathan, standing beside her with the flashlight app on his phone, couldn't explain the subtle shift. "It's an old house," he said, voice tighter than usual. "Floors settle, rooms sag. Nothing to worry about." Yet, when they finally turned in for the night, a soft creak echoed from the hallway. Then another. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the far end of the hall. Neither of them moved, they only listened. The sound paused just outside their door. "Hello?" Claire whispered. No response. The steps retreated, fading into the distance. Nathan tried to laugh it off, but the tension in his jaw betrayed him. "It's probably just the house, or a raccoon in the attic." Hours passed. Sleep eluded them. And when Claire finally drifted into a fitful doze, she awoke to a silence that felt wrong, too deep, too complete. She got out of bed, intending to check on Nathan, but the hallway looked different. Narrower, darker, longer. The door at the far end, one they had never noticed before, stood slightly ajar, a faint glow spilling from it. "Nathan," she called softly. No answer. She stepped closer to the strange door. The glow seemed to beckon her. And then she saw it, a faint inscription on the floorboards in front of the door, "Fear is home." Her breath caught. A whisper brushed the back of her neck. Not from Nathan, not from any rational source, just a voice, soft and dry, like dead leaves scratching against a window. "Leave, if you can." The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows, making the house seem almost normal. Perhaps it had been a dream, Claire thought, trying to convince herself. But when she tried to open the front door to leave, it didn't budge. The handle wouldn't turn. "Nathan," she said, panic rising. "Try the door." He came running, coffee in hand, his expression slowly twisting from confusion to dread. The door, solid wood, new locks intact, would not open. Windows, too, refused to slide or lift. They checked every exit. The garage, the back door, the side doors, all immovable. And then, the walls seemed to hum, subtle at first, a vibration that pulsed through the floorboards and the very bones of the house. Nathan's optimism cracked. This isn't possible," he whispered. "It's a house. Houses don't." A sudden, harsh laughter cut through the air, echoing from the walls themselves. It was dry, hollow, and unmistakably human. "Claire," Nathan's voice trembled. "We're not alone." From somewhere deep within the house came a long, metallic clang, like a door slamming shut, though none of them had moved. And then, as they both stared, the hallway behind them stretched and warped again, a twisting corridor that defied geometry and reason. The Winslow mansion had awoken. And it had chosen them. As they turned toward the impossible corridor, a whisper slithered from the shadows. "The longer you stay, the hungrier it becomes, and tonight, it will feed." The morning sunlight was cruel in its clarity. It revealed nothing new, yet every corner of the Winslow mansion seemed to thrum with a silent, malevolent pulse. Claire and Nathan had tried again, every door, every window, even the tiny trapdoor beneath the stairs that Nathan had discovered, but the house would not release them. Claire sat on the edge of their bed, hair disheveled, eyes wide and unblinking. Nathan paced, muttering theories that sounded increasingly desperate. Maybe it's some kind of psychological experiment. A haunted attraction, no, that doesn't make sense. He ran a hand through his hair, staring at the warped hallway that seemed to shift with every glance. Claire, shaking her head, whispered, "It's not an experiment. It's alive." Nathan froze. "Alive? Houses don't." A faint scratching echoed from somewhere above them, high in the attic. Neither moved for a long moment. Then, almost in unison, they stepped toward the source. The air grew colder with each step, and the shadows stretched like reaching hands along the floorboards. The attic door was slightly ajar, though they had left it closed the night before. A single beam of sunlight fell through the window, illuminating a cluster of old, dusty trunks. Something inside one of them shifted, quick, imperceptible, but enough to make Claire recoil. "I swear I saw something move," she murmured. Nathan swallowed hard. "It's probably a rat, a squirrel. Nothing alive would." The scratching became deliberate, more than a rat, more than a squirrel. Slow, measured. Intentional. And then came a whisper, faint, almost imperceptible. "You can't leave." Claire's pulse skyrocketed. "Did you hear that?" Nathan nodded, voice tight. "I did, and it's not saying goodbye." They descended the attic stairs slowly, holding hands. The house seemed to shift under their feet, the walls narrowing, the floorboards stretching unnaturally. They reached the hallway, which had grown longer, darker, the shadows deepening to almost blackness. For hours, they explored, trying to map the house, noting each change. A room that had once been a small guest bedroom now stretched impossibly, filled with antique furniture that wasn't there yesterday. The portraits lining the walls, the grim ancestors, seemed to watch their every move, their painted eyes following, judging. In the library, they discovered a set of journals stacked haphazardly on a mahogany desk. Claire opened one. The handwriting was spidery, hurried, the pages yellowed with age. "Day 47, I thought I could leave. I thought I was clever. The walls do not obey. They shift when I look away. The mirrors do not reflect me, they reflect what the house wants me to see. Fear sustains it. It grows stronger when I panic. If I scream, it listens." Claire's hand trembled. This isn't the first person trapped here." Nathan picked up another journal, flipping quickly. Each entry was eerily similar, descriptions of doors that vanished, hallways that stretched into infinity, and whispers that seemed to know the writer's deepest fears. One line repeated, scrawled in jagged letters across multiple pages. "Do not trust the floors. Do not trust the walls. Do not trust your own mind." A sudden crash upstairs made them both jump. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The house groaned, and for a moment, they could have sworn the floor itself had tilted, throwing them slightly off balance. Claire grabbed Nathan's arm. "We need to stay together. No matter what." Nathan nodded, eyes darting nervously. "Agreed. But we need a plan. Something concrete. We can't just wander." They decided to barricade themselves in one of the rooms, the study, which seemed stable, the walls less shifting. They stacked furniture against the door and pulled a thick rug under the gap. Hours passed. The house hummed. The shadows deepened. And then the whisper came again, this time closer, coming from beneath the floorboards. "Fear, it makes the walls hungry." Claire froze. "The floors?" Nathan looked down. The rug was writhing, as though something beneath it moved, trying to emerge. A low vibration pulsed through the floor, growing in intensity. Their panic surged. Suddenly, the room itself seemed to breathe, walls contracting and expanding, ceiling dipping closer, floors rippling like liquid. The furniture they had used to barricade the door was suddenly flung aside, as if tossed by invisible hands. A shape emerged from the shadows, a figure at first humanoid, then dissolving into darkness, a mass of shifting, claw-like appendages that seemed to crawl along the walls and ceiling. Its voice, a gurgling, distorted echo, spoke directly into their minds. "Welcome. I have been waiting for you." Claire screamed, clutching Nathan's arm. The figure recoiled from the center of the room, then lunged, vanishing into the walls. But its presence lingered. The air itself was thick, suffocating, carrying the scent of decay and old iron. They huddled together, shivering, every instinct screaming at them to run, yet there was nowhere to go. Every window, every door was just a wall. Every familiar path had vanished. In the silence that followed, a single thought clawed at their minds, one realization too terrible to speak aloud. The house didn't just trap people. It fed on them. As night fell, the whispering returned, louder, insistent. "The more you fight, the hungrier it becomes. And tonight, it will taste your fear first." Night had settled like a suffocating shroud over the Winslow mansion. Claire and Nathan sat huddled in the study, the shadows stretching long and dark against the walls, twisting unnaturally as if mocking their futile attempts to feel safe. Their breaths were shallow, the silence between them punctuated by the occasional creak of settling wood, or was it the house itself shifting, expanding, breathing? Claire's hands trembled as she clutched one of the journals they had found. The entries chronicled horrors that mirrored their own experiences, yet somehow each previous occupant had descended further into terror and madness. The idea of a pattern, the house feeding, growing stronger with each new victim, made her stomach churn. Nathan, meanwhile, paced the length of the room. His usual pragmatic demeanor had begun to crack under the weight of impossibility. "We have to understand it," he muttered. "There has to be a logic, a way to get it to release us." Claire shook her head. "It's not logic, Nathan. It's alive. Sentient. And it wants us to be afraid." The house seemed to respond. A low hum vibrated through the floorboards, growing in pitch, rising to a nearly unbearable frequency. The shadows lengthened further, pooling in corners like black ink. Then came the whispers, countless voices murmuring from the walls, sometimes forming words, sometimes just echoing syllables too distorted to understand. Nathan froze mid-step. Did you hear that?" Claire's eyes widened. "They're calling our names." Sure enough, the whispers coalesced, forming their names in eerie, breathy tones. "Claire." "Nathan, come closer, come closer." Against their better judgment, they followed the sound, drawn down the hallways that had shifted yet again. The layout of the house was no longer consistent with what they had explored hours ago, or days, though time itself seemed to stretch unnaturally. Hallways twisted back on themselves, rooms appeared where none had existed, filled with furniture that wasn't theirs, items that seemed to belong to previous victims. They entered a parlor they had never seen before. Dusty chandeliers swung slightly, though there was no draft. Mirrors lined the walls, reflecting not just their own images but distorted, flickering versions, eyes hollow, mouths open in silent screams. Claire stumbled backward. It's showing us, them. Nathan peered into one mirror. In its reflection, he saw himself, but older, gaunt, eyes sunken, shadows crawling across his skin. The reflection smiled, though his lips had not moved. A whisper hissed through the glass. "You belong here." A sudden crash from upstairs jerked them from the mirrors. Something heavy had fallen, though they couldn't pinpoint the source. The house groaned and creaked as if in laughter, and a shadow slithered across the floor, stretching unnaturally, reaching for them. Nathan grabbed Claire's hand. "We need to hide. Now." They fled down twisting corridors, the walls narrowing and expanding in a maddening rhythm. Their footsteps echoed endlessly, though each time they turned a corner, the hallway appeared unchanged, impossibly long, yet claustrophobically tight. Finally, they stumbled into a room that had once been the dining hall. Moonlight poured through tall windows, illuminating a massive table, set as if for a banquet, but the plates were cracked, the silver tarnished, and the chairs occupied by shadows that resembled long-dead faces from the journals. Claire's voice quivered. "Nathan, it's them. The others. They're trapped." A chill settled over the room. The shadows stirred, lifting from the chairs and creeping along the floor toward them. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, forming a cacophony of despair. "Join us, forever, you cannot leave, fear, feed." Nathan slammed his hands against the table. "Stop!" he yelled, though the sound seemed swallowed by the house itself. The shadows recoiled slightly, then surged forward, faster now. The temperature plummeted. Claire felt her fingers stiffen, her teeth chattering. Fear coursed through her like ice, feeding the house as it had fed every previous occupant. And then, the ceiling above them groaned and cracked. Dust and debris rained down. A voice, loud and thunderous, filled the hall. "Fear makes me strong. Panic makes me feed." Claire and Nathan screamed, fleeing through a door that had appeared out of nowhere. They ran blindly down hallways that twisted like a labyrinth, their own reflections appearing in the windows at impossible angles, mocking them, showing the worst versions of themselves. At last, they reached what seemed like a staircase leading down to the basement. A faint light glimmered at the bottom. Nathan peered over the banister. Maybe it's an exit?" Claire hesitated. "Or maybe it's a trap." The hum beneath their feet grew deafening. The whispers rose into a roar. And as they descended, the walls of the staircase began to ripple like liquid, distorting reality around them. Suddenly, the staircase ended in a large, circular room. The walls were lined with dozens of doors, each slightly different, some warped, some cracked, some whispering their names. At the center stood a pedestal, atop which rested an old, leather-bound book. The whispers urged them forward. "Open it, know the truth, you cannot leave until you understand." Nathan approached cautiously, hand hovering over the book. The room itself seemed to lean inward, the doors stretching toward them as if watching, waiting. Claire grabbed his arm. "Nathan, don't. We don't know what it will do." He glanced at her, eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. "We have to know, or we'll never escape." The whispers surged, a tidal wave of voices. "Fear. No. Belong." As Nathan's fingers brushed the leather cover, the doors slammed shut simultaneously, the hinges screeching. The shadows in the corners surged, and the whispers became a roar. The pedestal quaked. The book opened itself, revealing pages filled with words that seemed to crawl across the paper, forming sentences that made their hearts stop. The house is hungry. The house remembers. The house chooses. Claire tried to pull Nathan back, but the floor beneath them seemed to twist, and the walls began to pulse like a heartbeat. And then, in the midst of the chaos, a voice, low, guttural, impossibly close, spoke directly into their minds. The first taste is always the sweetest. Cliffhanger. As the words echoed in their minds, the shadows lunged, the book's pages flaring with a dark, unnatural light, and the room itself seemed to fold in on them. Claire and Nathan had no choice but to face the house's hunger, or be consumed entirely. The suspense ramps up here. The couple confronts the house's supernatural intelligence, sees the fate of previous victims, and discovers a sinister book tied to the house's power. The room folded in on itself. Walls bent impossibly, stretching and collapsing like the house itself was breathing, alive, hungry. Claire and Nathan stumbled backward, but the floor beneath them rippled, as if water replaced wood. The shadows surged forward, writhing, clawing at the edges of their vision. Nathan grabbed Claire's hand tightly. "We have to get out. There has to be a way out." Claire's eyes darted to the pedestal. The book lay open, its pages glowing faintly with an unholy light. Words writhed across the pages, shaping themselves into forms that clawed at her mind. Fear. Belong. Remember. As they stared, the letters twisted into names of previous occupants whose journals they had found. Their fates were written there, intertwined with the house's dark will. Each name pulsed as if alive, and for a moment, Claire saw her own name beginning to form among them. Nathan yanked her toward the nearest door, but the door wasn't there. In its place, the wall pressed forward, smooth and unbroken. Panic surged through them. Claire screamed, the sound swallowed by the pulsating walls. The whispers rose again, louder, forming coherent words this time. Fear feeds. Panic feeds. You cannot leave. The shadows around them thickened, coalescing into forms that seemed humanoid, yet wrong. Limbs stretched at unnatural angles, faces twisted in silent screams. Each one moved closer, reaching toward them with clawed hands. Claire stumbled backward, her mind racing. Nathan, the journals. They mentioned something, someone survived before, maybe there's a pattern. Nathan's face was pale, eyes wide. Yes, but they all failed in the end. If we're not careful, his voice trailed off as a shadow lunged at him, its form solidifying into something grotesque. He barely dodged, grabbing Claire's arm and pulling her away. The floor beneath them shook violently. The shadows recoiled momentarily, then surged again, faster and more aggressive. The house was feeding, not just on their fear, but on their every attempt to resist. Claire noticed something glimmering in the corner, a small, cracked mirror, angled oddly, reflecting a portion of the room that the eye couldn't normally see. In its reflection, she saw a hallway, familiar, yet impossible, leading to a door framed in faint light. Nathan. The mirror. Look. Nathan squinted, then gasped. That could be a way out. The shadows hissed, a sound like metal scraping bone. The book's glow flared, and the whispers turned frantic. Don't trust. Don't trust. They cannot escape. Adrenaline surged through them. Claire grabbed the mirror, angling it so the reflection lined up with the twisted floorboards. The hallway seemed to ripple and stretch until, impossibly, it became real. The door at the end gleamed faintly, almost beckoning them. Now! Nathan shouted. They ran, the shadows snapping at their heels. The floor undulated, trying to swallow them, but the reflection led them straight to the door. Claire's hand found the handle, cold metal biting her fingers. She yanked it open, and a sudden gust of icy air rushed through, forcing the shadows to recoil. They stumbled into a narrow corridor, lined with peeling wallpaper and faintly lit by wall sconces that flickered unnaturally. For the first time in hours, or days, the house felt slightly less oppressive. The whispers had faded, replaced by an eerie silence. But the relief was short-lived. As they pressed forward, the corridor twisted unnaturally. Doors appeared on either side, some normal, some warped, some almost invisible. Each one whispered their names, tempting them to enter. Claire grabbed Nathan's arm. "Ignore them. Focus on the end. Just keep moving." They reached a staircase leading upward. With each step, the air grew colder, and the sensation of being watched intensified. At the top, they found a door unlike any other, freshly painted, sturdy, and seemingly immune to the house's manipulations. A faint light spilled from beneath it. Nathan reached for the handle. This is it, Claire. We can leave." The house groaned, an almost sentient warning. The walls shuddered, the floorboards trembling violently. The whispers surged again, now forming a single voice, deep and guttural. "You cannot escape what belongs to me." Claire hesitated, heart pounding. "We have to try, Nathan. We can't stay here." They pushed the door open and stepped into blinding light. For a moment, they thought they were free, the oppressive weight of the Winslow mansion lifted as if it had released them. But the air shifted. The shadows weren't gone, they were waiting, just beyond the light, stretching impossibly toward them. And then Claire noticed the faint outline of the house behind them, superimposed over reality, as if it had never truly released its grip. A whisper followed, soft, chilling, intimate. "Even outside. I remember." They had escaped the immediate clutches of the mansion, but the house's reach was far greater than they imagined. Somewhere, somehow, the Winslow mansion remembered them, and it had plans. Claire and Nathan stumbled into the outside world, or so they thought. The light blinded them, burning at their retinas, and for a moment, they simply collapsed onto the grass, gasping for breath. The air smelled sweet and fresh, a stark contrast to the stale, metallic tang of the Winslow mansion. For a brief, blissful moment, they felt alive. Free. Nathan laughed shakily, a sound tinged with relief and disbelief. We made it. We actually made it." Claire nodded, but a deep unease gnawed at her. "I don't feel safe." "Not really." The landscape around them should have been familiar, the wooded hill, the distant town, but something was subtly, unnervingly wrong. The trees twisted at odd angles, their shadows unnaturally long and moving as if alive. The air carried a faint whisper, almost imperceptible, that seemed to echo Claire's thoughts back to her. Nathan noticed it too. "Claire, do you hear that?" She nodded, voice barely a whisper. "It's the house." Their relief shattered. The mansion's influence had followed them, or perhaps it had never let go. Panic surged as they realized the full scope of what they had escaped from, a house that could manipulate space, time, and perception, a house that fed on fear and lingered long after its victims left its walls. Nathan grabbed Claire's hand. "We need to get to the town. Find someone, anyone. Tell them. Maybe they can help." They ran down the hill, the shadows stretching toward them, writhing like dark fingers. Every step felt heavier, the ground beneath them subtly shifting as if the earth itself belonged to the Winslow mansion. The town came into view, a familiar grid of streets, houses, and streetlights, but it, too, was warped. Windows stared back like eyes, doors gaped like mouths, and every reflection in the glass showed them older, haggard, haunted versions of themselves. Claire shuddered. "It's everywhere. It's still here." A sudden scream pierced the night, cutting through the warped silence. They froze. It was human, but wrong. Hollow, distorted, echoing unnaturally long. Nathan swallowed hard. "We need to keep moving. Don't look back." They navigated the streets cautiously, each house they passed seeming to twist, shift, and breathe. The whispers returned, stronger now, a cacophony of voices overlapping, almost intelligible. "Fear. Remember. belong. At the edge of town, they found a small diner, lights flickering, a faint hum of life inside. A single figure, a waitress, stood behind the counter. She looked up, eyes wide, pale, frozen in an expression of terror. Claire stepped forward. "Please, help us. There's a house, Winslow Mansion. It's alive. It traps people. The waitress' gaze shifted downward, then back at them, and she whispered, almost inaudibly. "You can't stop it. You can't leave. It remembers." Before Claire could respond, the diner's walls rippled like liquid. The light flickered and went out. When it returned, the waitress was gone. The booths were empty. The door out of the diner led not to the street, but to a narrow corridor lined with shadows, corridors they had never seen before, impossibly long, endlessly twisting. Nathan's face went pale. It's pulling us back." Claire realized with a sinking dread that no matter how far they fled, the mansion's reach extended beyond its walls. Fear had become a tether, anchoring them to its influence. Every step they had taken outside had been part of the house's design, feeding, stretching, trapping, bending reality until escape seemed possible but was never truly attainable. A whisper slithered around them, low and intimate. "You cannot leave, not while you remember." The corridors twisted and shifted, leading them through rooms they had seen before, but altered. Furniture from the mansion appeared, chairs, broken tables, portraits of grim ancestors. The air was thick with the metallic tang of fear and decay. Claire realized the truth. "Nathan, it's not the house that's alive, it's everything it touches. We thought we left, but we didn't. It never lets go." Nathan's voice was trembling. Then what do we do? How do we escape?" Claire glanced around. A faint light flickered at the end of the corridor, a single door, like a faint promise of freedom. But as they approached, shadows surged, forming humanoid shapes, whispering their names, circling them with malice. The whispers grew frantic, overlapping, a chaotic chorus of voices. "Fear. Belong. Remember. Feed." Claire and Nathan backed into each other, trapped. Their hearts pounded, breath coming in ragged gasps. The shadows lunged closer, stretching impossibly, their fingers brushing against reality itself. Then, a sudden stillness. The air vibrated, thick with anticipation. The whispers fell silent for a single, suffocating moment. And a single, terrifying voice cut through the void, low, guttural, unmistakable. "You can never leave, because you are mine." They had fled the mansion, and yet they were still trapped, bound by the house's terrifying power. Claire and Nathan realized, with growing horror, that the house was no longer just walls and doors, it was everywhere, and it would not let them go. Claire and Nathan stood in the shifting corridor, shadows clawing at the edges of their vision. Every instinct screamed to run, yet every step seemed drawn forward by some invisible force. The mansion's influence stretched like a web, wrapping reality around them, feeding on their terror. Nathan's hand gripped Claire's tightly. "There has to be a way to fight it, something we missed." Claire shook her head, tears streaking her face. "It's not just the house. It's everything it touches. Every step we've taken outside, every memory we hold, it's all part of it. The house doesn't end at its walls. It's inside us." A flicker of movement drew their attention. At the end of the corridor was a room bathed in pale, unnatural light. Something compelled them forward, a promise of answers, or perhaps a final trap. The air grew colder, thicker, almost tangible. Whispers swirled around them like a storm. "Fear. Remember. Belong. Feed." As they entered the room, the light coalesced into a figure, a tall, gaunt man draped in shadows, his face partially obscured, eyes hollow but piercing. Nathan instinctively stepped in front of Claire. Who are you?" he demanded. The figure's voice was low, echoing unnaturally. I am what remains, of those who came before. I am the memory the house keeps alive. And soon, you will join us. Claire's stomach twisted. The journals, you're one of them? The figure nodded. Every soul trapped here leaves a trace. Every scream, every terror, every heartbeat of fear is woven into the house. I am the sum of those who were consumed, and yet I am not free. Nathan's voice trembled. Then, we can't leave? The figure's gaze fell upon them, and the walls around them seemed to lean closer, listening. You can leave, if you are willing to give up everything. The house does not want your bodies. It wants your memory, your fear, your essence. And it will not be denied. Claire's mind raced. Everything, meaning, it's feeding on us even if we escape physically. Our memories, our minds, it's never over. The shadows around the room coalesced, forming grotesque shapes, faces of past victims, their mouths open in silent screams, their eyes hollow wells of despair. Each whispered fragments of memory, pulling at Claire and Nathan, reminding them of their deepest fears, their regrets, their failures. Nathan looked at Claire, realization dawning. If it wants our fear, what if we stop being afraid? The gaunt figure tilted its head. Clever, but few have the strength. Fear is life here. Only by understanding, by embracing the truth, can you stand a chance. Claire swallowed her terror. She thought of the house's walls, the shifting hallways, the whispers, the shadows. It only exists because we fear it. Its power comes from us. She clenched Nathan's hand. We have to face it. Together. We have to stop running. Nathan nodded, voice steadying. Then, we face it. Whatever it is. They took a step forward. The shadows surged, twisting and lashing like serpents, but Claire and Nathan held their ground, refusing to scream, refusing to run. The whispers became frantic, the house shuddering violently. Fear. Feed. Remember. Claire spoke aloud, voice trembling but firm, we are not yours. We will not give you our fear. Nathan echoed her, raising his voice, we are more than your walls. More than your shadows. We are ourselves. The room exploded in a violent flash of light and sound. The walls quivered, the floor rippled, shadows shrieked. And then, silence. When they opened their eyes, the corridor was gone. The mansion itself was gone. They stood on a quiet hilltop beneath a starlit sky. The town lay normal before them. The oppressive weight had lifted. Claire gasped, hugging Nathan. It's over. Nathan looked around cautiously. We actually made it. But then they noticed something, the faintest whisper on the wind, almost a sigh. You remember, and so I endure. They exchanged a glance. The house was gone, but its memory lingered, haunting the edges of reality. The influence was weaker, perhaps dormant, yet they knew one truth, the Winslow mansion would never truly be destroyed. It only needed fear to live again. Claire whispered, voice resolute. We survived. We remember, and that's enough. Nathan nodded. We'll warn others. We'll never forget. And if it ever returns, we'll face it together, Claire finished. The night was still, peaceful, almost deceptively so. But deep in the shadows of their memories, in the corners of dreams yet to come, the mansion waited. Silent. Patient. Hungry. For the house never truly ends. It only waits, for fear, for memory, for the next soul who dares step inside. The mansion's true power was never just its walls, its rooms, or its shadows, it was the fear and memory of its victims. Physical escape was possible, but the house's essence clings to the psyche, feeding on lingering terror. Claire and Nathan survived physically, but their memories forever tether them to the Winslow mansion, ensuring its continued existence through their own minds.